Okay, here we go with a macroeconomics question number one, which is really two short questions from previous AP exams. For the first part of this, I'm using the 2008 Form B, question number 3. I've got the table of numbers on the board here that you're given in the question, and let's get going. Galaland produces 3 final goods: bread, water, and fruit. Bread, water, and fruit. The table above shows this year's output and price for each good. Calculate this year's nominal GDP. Nominal GDP using this year's prices. So part A, this year's nominal GDP, 400 times 6 plus 1,000 times 2 plus 800 times 2. So that's 2,400 plus 2,000 plus 1,600, and that's going to equal $6,000 exactly. Okay, that was easy. They always start you off with something easy. B, assume that in Galaland, the GDP deflator, and then they clarify the GDP price index. So remember, a deflator is just a certain kind of price index. Remember, price indexes are based on percents. The base year is 100% of itself, okay? So assume the Galaland uses the GDP deflator is 100 in the base year, of course, and 150 this year. Calculate each of the following: the inflation rate expressed as a percentage between the base year and this year. Well, it's 50 divided by 100, which is 50%. Prices have increased by 50%. %50 inflation. Okay, and if they want you to show how you got that, it's 150 minus 100 divided by 100, 50 over 100 times 100 to make it a percentage, right? Okay, this year's real GDP. So now we have to figure out this year's real GDP, and that's going to be the 6,000 divided by 1.5, which is going to equal 4,000. $6,000 divided by 1.5 equals 4,000. All right. Part C, since the base year, workers have received a 20% increase in their nominal wages. If workers face the same inflation you calculated back in part B1, 50% inflation, what has happened to their real wages? Their real wages have fallen because prices have risen by 50%. Wages only rose by 20%. That's a 30% fall in real wages. Okay. They want you to write down, one point is explain that the real wage rose by only 20% as compared to the inflation rate of 50%. Okay. Real wages up by 20%, prices up by 50%, and that's a 30% decline in real wages. Okay. D, if the GDP deflator in Galaland increases unexpectedly, so unexpected inflation, would a borrower with a fixed interest rate loan be better off or worse off? And of course, he's going to be better off because the lender expected a lower rate of inflation. The borrower is paying back the loan using fewer real dollars. So the lender is better off because he's repaying the loan with cheaper dollars, okay? And you can write that out. All right, so now I'm going to go to the second part of this question. So for the second part of this question number 1, we're going to use 2010, just regular form 2010, not form B. Question number 2, a drop in, I hope you've got it in front of you, okay? You should be looking at it. A drop in credit card fees causes people to use credit cards more often for transactions and demand less money. A, using a correctly labeled graph of the money market, show how the nominal interest rate would be affected. So you're not supposed to have to do a graph for this. They'll just ask you, how would that affect the nominal interest rate? So on your scratch paper over here, you're going to draw that money market graph. Now remember, the money market is the one with the vertical money supply curve. It's not the loanable funds market. So the money market graph has a demand that starts somewhere to the right of the vertical axis, which is the interest rate, and goes down. There's your demand for money. This is the money supply, MS. And they're saying that because credit card fees are reduced, people use credit cards more often, and money demand shifts back to the left. So D prime for money. Here's the supply of money. Here was the original interest rate, I1. Here's the new interest rate, I2. And so your answer for part A is interest rates, nominal interest rate would decline, okay? And I write out nominal, NOM, interest rate declines, okay? They don't ask you why there. B, given the interest rate change in part A, declining interest, what will happen to bond prices in the short run? Please remember the inverse relationship between interest rates and bond prices. Interest rates down, bond prices up. Bond prices up. They rise, okay? I would say bond prices increase or rise. They don't ask you to explain here, okay? Part C, given the interest rate change in Part A, reduction interest rate, what will happen to the price level in the short run? Now you need to be thinking ADAS. So lower prices, okay? So here's my scratch work, my train of thinking here, okay? Interest rates down. Remember, that's going to impact investment spending because of the investment demand curve. Investment spending will increase. Investment spending is a component of GDP. That's going to lead to aggregate demand increase. A component of aggregate demand, it's going to lead to an increase in aggregate demand. If aggregate demand shifts to the right, that's going to lead to an increase in the price level. And that's what we're trying to get at, okay? So part C, price level increases. Why? Because, and you write out this train, okay? Interest rates down lead to investment spending up, leads to aggregate demand up, leads to increasing price level. Part D, identify an open market operation the Federal Reserve could use to keep the nominal interest rate constant at the level that existed before the drop in credit card fees. So we want to get the interest rate back up. So what do we want to do with the money supply? We want to reduce the money supply. We want to shift the money supply back to the left here so that it gets back to the same interest rate that we had before. Supply prime of money. How do we reduce the money supply? Using open market operations. Do we buy or sell? Well, if we buy from banks, we have to give them more excess reserves. That's going to increase the money supply. So we must be selling bonds to the banks to take money out of their excess reserves. So we're going to sell. The OMO, open market operation that we want to do is sell bonds. Why? Because that will reduce excess reserves and reduce the money supply, MS, that should be money supply there, reduce the money supply, which will lead to an increase in the interest rate. Okay, so that is the second part. The second question, which is the second part of what's going to be for you, question number 1. So hopefully that refreshed your memory on some macro stuff.